Imagine powering on your computer in 2026 and being greeted by a desktop that feels instantly familiar, yet unmistakably modern. Fast without feeling rushed, beautiful without being fragile, and powerful without demanding that you be a Linux expert. That experience is exactly what Kubuntu Linux in 2026 aims to deliver. Kubuntu Linux has always lived at the intersection of elegance and practicality, and in 2026 it feels more refined, more confident, and more relevant than ever before. Built on the solid foundation of Ubuntu Linux and paired with the KDE Plasma desktop, Kubuntu Linux 2026 positions itself as a fast, highly customizable, and genuinely beginner-friendly Linux operating system that doesn't talk down to new users and doesn't hold back advanced ones either. When you first install Kubuntu Linux 2026, one thing becomes immediately clear: this is a distribution that values polish. The installer is smooth, reliable, and reassuring, especially for users migrating from Windows or macOS. The Calamares-based installer experience in Kubuntu Linux makes the process feel less like a technical chore and more like a guided setup. Disk partitioning can be automatic for beginners or fully manual for advanced users. And Kubuntu Linux does a good job of explaining what's happening without overwhelming you. By the time the installation finishes, you already feel like the system respects your choices rather than forcing you into a rigid setup. Once you log into Kubuntu Linux 2026 for the first time, the KDE Plasma desktop immediately steals the spotlight. KDE Plasma in 2026 is incredibly mature, and Kubuntu Linux benefits directly from that maturity. The desktop is smooth, responsive, and visually cohesive. Animations are subtle and fluid, window transitions feel natural, and nothing feels unnecessarily heavy. Kubuntu Linux manages to make KDE Plasma feel both powerful and approachable, which is something that older versions sometimes struggled with. In 2026, KDE Plasma on Kubuntu Linux feels like a desktop that has finally found its perfect balance. Performance is one of the strongest reasons to consider Kubuntu Linux in 2026. On modern hardware, Kubuntu Linux feels lightning fast, with near-instant application launches and minimal system lag. What's more impressive is how well Kubuntu Linux performs on older or mid-range systems. Thanks to KDE Plasma's continued optimization, Kubuntu Linux 2026 uses system resources intelligently. Memory usage at idle is impressively low for a full-featured desktop environment, and CPU usage remains calm even with multiple applications open. For users who want speed without sacrificing visual quality, Kubuntu Linux hits a sweet spot that few other Linux distributions manage to achieve. Customization is where Kubuntu Linux truly shines, and in 2026 it has doubled down on this strength. KDE Plasma is famous for its flexibility, and Kubuntu Linux makes that flexibility accessible rather than intimidating. You can change nearly every aspect of the desktop, from panel layouts and widget behavior to window decorations and global themes, all without touching a terminal. Want a Windows-like layout with a single bottom panel and system tray? Kubuntu Linux can do that in minutes. Prefer a macOS-style dock with a global menu? Kubuntu Linux can handle that too. Or maybe you want something completely unique that reflects your personal workflow. Kubuntu Linux doesn't just allow customization, it actively encourages it. What makes Kubuntu Linux especially impressive in 2026 is how it balances customization with stability. In the past, extreme customization sometimes meant instability, but modern Kubuntu Linux feels robust even when heavily modified. KDE Plasma settings are well organized, changes apply instantly, and rolling back visual tweaks is easy if something doesn't feel right. This makes Kubuntu Linux an excellent learning platform for new Linux users who want to experiment without fear of breaking their system. Beginner friendliness is a core pillar of Kubuntu Linux, and in 2026, this aspect is stronger than ever. Despite its power and flexibility, Kubuntu Linux doesn't overwhelm newcomers. The default layout feels familiar to Windows users, with a start menu-like application launcher, taskbar, and system tray. File management in Kubuntu Linux, handled by the Dolphin File Manager, is intuitive and feature-rich without being confusing. Dolphin offers split views, tabs, and powerful search tools, but it never forces these features on users who don't need them. For beginners, it works like a simple file explorer. For advanced users, it becomes a productivity powerhouse. Software management in Kubuntu Linux 2026 is another area where the distribution excels. Thanks to its Ubuntu Linux base, Kubuntu Linux has access to one of the largest software repositories in the Linux ecosystem. The Discover Software Center provides a clean, modern interface for installing applications, managing updates, and even handling Flatpak and Snap packages. In 2026, Discover feels faster and more reliable than ever, making software installation as simple as it is on mainstream operating systems. Beginners can install apps with a single click, while more experienced users still have full access to the terminal and apt package manager if they prefer that level of control. Kubuntu Linux in 2026 also benefits from Ubuntu Linux's long-term support philosophy. Whether you choose the latest standard release or an LTS version, Kubuntu Linux offers a predictable update cycle and strong stability guarantees. This is especially important for beginners who don't want their system breaking after a routine update. Security patches, kernel updates, and bug fixes arrive regularly, and the update process in Kubuntu Linux is clear and non-intrusive. You're informed, not interrupted, which makes daily use feel smooth and stress-free. Hardware compatibility has always been one of Ubuntu Linux's strengths, and Kubuntu Linux inherits that advantage. In 2026, Kubuntu Linux supports a wide range of hardware out of the box, from modern laptops with high-resolution displays to older desktops that need a second life. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, printers, and webcams generally work without manual configuration, which is a huge win for beginners. Graphics driver support, especially for NVIDIA hardware, has improved significantly, and Kubuntu Linux makes it easy to install proprietary drivers when needed, all through a simple graphical interface. For productivity, Kubuntu Linux 2026 comes well equipped. The default installation includes LibreOffice, which handles documents, spreadsheets, and presentations with ease. KDE applications like kwrite, Ocular, and Gwenview feel polished and tightly integrated into the desktop. Ocular, in particular, stands out as one of the best document viewers available on any platform, handling PDFs, ebooks, and more with speed and clarity. Kubuntu Linux makes everyday tasks feel efficient rather than cumbersome. Multimedia is another area where Kubuntu Linux has matured. In 2026, media playback works smoothly right after installation, with support for most common audio and video formats. The default media players are capable and lightweight, and installing additional codecs is straightforward if needed. Whether you're watching videos, listening to music, or editing media, Kubuntu Linux feels ready for the task. For content creators, the availability of powerful tools like DenLav, GIMP, Blender, and OBS Studio in the Kubuntu Linux ecosystem makes it a compelling platform for creative work. Gaming on Kubuntu Linux in 2026 is no longer a niche experiment. It's a viable and enjoyable experience. Thanks to improvements in Linux gaming overall, Kubuntu Linux works exceptionally well with Steam, Proton, and other gaming platforms. Performance is strong, compatibility is broad, and system stability during long gaming sessions is impressive. KDE Plasma's low overhead helps games run smoothly, and Kubuntu Linux doesn't get in the way with unnecessary background processes. For gamers who want to leave Windows behind, Kubuntu Linux offers a serious alternative. Security and privacy are often overlooked in desktop operating system reviews, but Kubuntu Linux deserves recognition here as well. Being open source, Kubuntu Linux allows users to see exactly what the system is doing, which builds trust. There's no hidden telemetry collecting your data, no forced online accounts, and no intrusive advertisements. In 2026, when digital privacy is a growing concern, Kubuntu Linux feels refreshingly respectful. Security updates arrive quickly, and the system's permissions model helps protect users without making them feel restricted. One of the underrated strengths of Kubuntu Linux in 2026 is its community. Backed by the larger Ubuntu Linux ecosystem and the KDE community, Kubuntu Linux users have access to extensive documentation, forums, and tutorials. When something goes wrong, help is usually just a search away. This community support is especially valuable for beginners who might feel lost when encountering Linux for the first time. Kubuntu Linux doesn't leave you alone to figure things out. It connects you to a global network of users and developers who genuinely want to help. From an aesthetic standpoint, Kubuntu Linux 2026 is simply beautiful. The default theme is clean, modern, and easy on the eyes, with careful attention to typography, spacing, and color balance. High DPI support is excellent, making Kubuntu Linux a great choice for modern laptops with sharp displays. Dark mode works consistently across applications, and the overall visual experience feels cohesive rather than patched together. Kubuntu Linux proves that Linux desktops can be just as visually appealing as their proprietary counterparts. For developers, Kubuntu Linux offers an excellent working environment. The terminal is powerful, development tools are easy to install, and the system stays out of your way. KDE's console terminal emulator is fast, customizable, and feature-rich, making it a favorite among developers. Whether you're working with web technologies, software development, or scripting, Kubuntu Linux provides a stable and efficient platform. The Ubuntu Linux base ensures compatibility with a wide range of development tools and frameworks, which is a major advantage in professional environments. Even for everyday home users, Kubuntu Linux in 2026 feels like a complete operating system, rather than a compromise. Browsing the web, managing emails, watching videos, and handling personal files all feel natural and smooth. Popular browsers like Firefox and Chromium run perfectly, and online services integrate well. Kubuntu Linux doesn't constantly remind you that you're using Linux. Instead, it lets you focus on what you want to do. Perhaps the most impressive thing about Kubuntu Linux 2026 is how confidently it positions itself. It's not trying to be the simplest Linux distribution at the expense of power, nor is it trying to be a hardcore system that scares away newcomers. Kubuntu Linux understands its identity. It is fast, deeply customizable, and welcoming to beginners, all at the same time. That balance is difficult to achieve, and Kubuntu Linux manages it with surprising grace. As we look at the Linux landscape in 2026, Kubuntu Linux stands out as a distribution that has grown alongside its users. It respects beginners by giving them a smooth, intuitive experience, and it rewards curiosity by offering endless customization and control. Whether you're switching from Windows, experimenting with Linux for the first time, or returning after years away, Kubuntu Linux feels like a safe and exciting place to land. In a world where operating systems increasingly feel locked down, noisy, and intrusive, Kubuntu Linux 2026 offers something different. It offers freedom without chaos, beauty without bloat, and power without arrogance. It's fast enough to feel modern, customizable enough to feel personal, and friendly enough to feel like home. For anyone looking for a Linux operating system that truly delivers on its promises, Kubuntu Linux in 2026 is not just a good choice, it's one of the best choices you can make.